Welcome to the Millennial Body Image Project, where we dive into the unique and messy body image journey that continues to shape our generation.
We're here to flip the script on toxic wellness culture, challenge weight stigma, and tackle the intersectional forces that shape how we see our bodies and our health.
Because your body is not a problem to be fixed.
Before we get started today, we wanted to give a big thanks to Hungry Root for sponsoring today's episode. Make sure you check out the link in the show notes or use the code DANAM40 to receive 40% off your first box, plus get a free item in every box for life.
Today's episode.
Classically inspired by a client session.
Oh my God. Everything's inspired by a client session. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. So the past couple of episodes, another thing that we're seeing a lot, which is related to the past 2 episodes that we've done this month, is related to burnout and dysregulation, and then also ADHD. And we were talking about planning for this month and next month as well. And Christina was like, I think I really want to talk about something that I think is very relevant to what I had talked about in a client session. And I'm like, perfect. Let's just roll with it. I don't need to know anything else. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's very relatable. I think one of the things that this client and I were talking about is they don't even actually know if they have ADHD. They suspect, and they're going through the process of trying to get a formal diagnosis. And I was saying to them that it doesn't even matter if you have ADHD or not. A lot of us can fall into this kind of shame loop, but it can be more prominent for people with ADHD because of various different factors. But one of the things that she was talking about was this shame loop that she is falling into, where she has this internal narrative that she doesn't take care of herself well enough and that she could be doing better. And I think that this is a narrative that a lot of people have. It has a lot to do with as our bodies changes, the narrative around what that means and what society thinks that means, the concept of lazy and all the things that Dana and I keep saying oh, we need to do an episode about, and yet we still haven't done
And we haven't done it yet.
But we are going to do one eventually. It just also feels like a big topic to tackle, but I also think keep it simple and be effective. But one of the things that we had talked about was this idea of them not feeling like they are able to take care of themselves, or they feel like they're not doing enough. And part of this has to do with their unique health history. They have chronic health issues and they've had stuff before. They used to meet with functional doctors where there was a lot of pressure and shame around how they fed themselves and how they took care of themselves. And at the time, the doctor was hyper fixated on their weight, and they were like, well, why don't we worry about my chronic disease and all this types of stuff. And in one hand, we can be really appreciative of our doctor and helping us being able to get through our chronic health and manage it, because they definitely feel that way. But at the same time, it's kind of left this snail slime after the fact. After the fact, it's residual slime that's been left behind, where it's led into this thing and this narrative that they have that they're not doing enough. And one of the things and I don't think that this person is the only person who feels this way. Dana, could you name 10 clients that feel this way too?
Oh, yes.
Literally everyone, right? Whether or not they're able to identify it and say I don't feel like I do enough, or I'm not good at taking care of myself. But I think anyone who falls into any kind of dysregulated, which is something that we talked about with the body image and checking stuff too, and burnout, even if you don't have ADHD, let's say you do, and you also are burnt out, overwhelmed, and all of the things too, or you have depression or you have anxiety, it's really easy to create this internal dialogue around this idea that you're not doing enough. And one of the things that with ADHD, and I think with any kind of narrative like this, is at the core, there's often a major disconnect between intention and action. We might know, and this is what I hear so often from clients, and I know you do too, Dana, where it's they might know what would help them feel better, right? I know that I would feel better if I moved my body more regularly, I was more intentional, or I ate more consistently, or I improved my sleep, or I don't drink enough water, or I'd feel better. If you have I would feel better if I just took a shower more regularly. Those are real struggles. But doing those things consistently can feel like climbing a mountain in flip-flops in a lot of ways. And so there's this loop that happens as a result of this and this narrative that we have within ourselves around, I'm not doing enough, I can't take care of myself. And it really, I think, comes down to this core idea between this disconnection between intention and action.
Mm-hmm. And what is that?
Oh,
Executive function.
yeah, right. Executive function, right? Being able to do that. But also,
Yeah.
it's not even to me just executive function. Like sometimes it has to do with the whole idea of just being burnt out or being asked to do too many things, right? Even if you don't have ADHD, your executive function bucket can get overwhelmed and get
Mm-hmm.
overloaded. And if you have ADHD on top of it, it can make that even more difficult. Or if you have depression, it's not a matter of like, oh, I don't have executive function skills. I just can't access them
Hmm.
because it's too
Yeah.
much or it's too difficult, you know?
Yeah. And I think we see this a lot, especially since November of last year, or even more than that, I would say, because the more that this political, economic, environmental, all of the climates have been rapidly evolving over this year and last year. I mean, obviously, this didn't just happen, but even since COVID, the more depleted our internal and external resources are, plus the amount of stress on all of us is steadily ramping up. And so you could be doing all of the things you could, like, wow, we talked about this so long ago, but you could be taking care of yourself like a complicated houseplant. You could be getting sunlight. You could be nourishing yourself. You could be drinking water. You could be getting gentle movement. It's not enough at this point. And one of the things that I mentioned in Sarah's episode last week when we were talking about executive function was the more dysregulated and the more burnt out that you feel, the harder it is to access this executive function, the more that you will notice body checking and negative body image stuff coming up, and the easier it is to fall into this shame loop. Like Christina said, regardless of whether or not you have ADHD, because we also have this internal narrative, and we promise at some point we will talk about this on the laziness episode, is this when you come in this shame loop, you're not thinking about on the logical side of things of like, oh my gosh, of course I have a lowered capacity right now because look at all the stress that's on my plate. I was just sick for 3 weeks. Look at all the things that are
Oh
going
my
on in the
gosh.
world. Like, you're not thinking about all this stuff. You're just thinking about why can't I get myself to take a shower? Or like, why can't I get myself to just write this freaking email? Why have I been putting off this 2-minute phone call for the last 4 weeks that every single time that I think about it, it makes me feel awful. And then I suddenly forget about it for another 3 days. And then I feel awful again the next time that I remember it.
Totally.
So it's difficult because when that situation keeps happening, you're not thinking about all of the external and maybe internal circumstances that I just talked about and that Christina's been mentioning also. Our brains immediately go to, well, I just must be lazy. I must just have no willpower. I just can't do this. Like, this is something wrong with me. And that is a big cultural thing that we have been taught for the longest time. And I think that feeds in a lot with the different layers that you may have, whether it's depression or anxiety, or it's you've come from somewhere like functional medicine when the prescription is basically like, oh, well, here's the diagnosis, here's all the tools, you have them now. If you don't get better, it's because you're not doing the tools well enough, right? And
Yeah.
so it feeds this shame loop from multiple different entry points. So it makes total sense that if you are relating to this, you feel really stuck because even if you didn't have all of these different circumstances that I just mentioned, you would still be able to fall into this shame loop. So when you do have all of these extra things going on that are draining your capacity, of course you feel stuck. Of course you feel like you're a lazy piece of shit who can't do anything because that's the narrative that we've been fed.
Yeah. I think one of the things too that I was thinking about that I actually had this conversation with a client of mine, and it fits in because we haven't really talked about this either because obviously Dana doesn't have any children. So I have to bring in the motherhood perspective into this too a little bit. But one of the things that I was going to say for anybody who's also a parent at the same time, One of the things a client of mine and I were talking about
Another
this,
layer.
another layer, right? Another layer of complication. A client of mine and I were talking just the other day, and they were saying how they just feel so overwhelmed and they're having a difficult time implementing basic self-care for themselves. And I said to them, I love the idea of we got to fill our own bucket first. We got to put on our own oxygen mask too. And I was like, I get that. That's not always parenting. It's not always realistic to be able to do that because sometimes our child's needs are louder and more relevant and more like important in that moment. That it's easy for us to put off like going to the gym or getting our movement in or being able to like, we're so focused on making sure that our kids have the foods that they want and make sure that they have what they need available that we then don't get enough time to prep some meals for ourselves or like whatever that looks like. And I'm not saying this as like a permission slip. It's like, oh, that's motherhood. Suck it up. Like you're not gonna be able to take care of yourself. That's not the thing that I'm saying. The point that I'm really making is sometimes there's only so much that we can give. And I was saying this to my client that I was like, this should really bring compassion to you as an individual. And even if you're not raising children, like there's room for compassion here too, because we are trying to do so much. But I think it's important to put this as like for the mothers out there and for the people who are parenting, anyone who's parenting doesn't have to be a mother. If you're parenting, sometimes it's unrealistic and a little bit I find to be kind of like this perfectionistic and romanticized idea that like, oh, I'm going to take care of myself first and I'm going to make sure that's like sometimes that's not how it works. Sometimes the time that you can take care of yourself, and I was joking around with my client about this, that like every time I ever try to wake up early to do something for myself beforehand, it's like my kids have their own internal clock of like, she's awake. And then and they wake up then too. And it's so then what I had thought I was going to have this time to do this because why would they wake up at 5:45 in the morning? Because they never do. I now no longer have that available. And also too, I also think it's unrealistic to put that kind of expectation on parents to say, if you want to have any time for yourself or meal prep for yourself or do anything, you better freaking wake up at the ass crack of dawn. If I kept seeing another Instagram reel about someone's like 4 a.m. wake up, go for a 3-mile run, I want to be like, dude, what time are you going to bed? Second of all, like, what are you doing? How are you doing this? So,
Recipe for burnout right there. Please
right,
don't do that.
like recipe for burnout. And then I'm like, okay, this is really cute for your content, but like, how many days are you actually doing this? And how are you actually physically feeling? And like, where's your nanny? Where is the other person here? But I just want to like point that out a little bit, that I think that also is like another layer. And I think the point is that I'm making is that we need to meet ourselves where we are and be really compassionate with ourselves with all of this too, because it makes sense that as you hear and see all these things and you're being told all these different places, like, oh, you need to get enough water, you need to get movement in, you need to do this, you need to meal prep, you need to blah, 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 and your house needs to look perfect. And like, oh, and by the way, you better look styled every day and like ready to go and look cute and blah, 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 and all the things that no wonder you would feel like, why can't I do this? Why does this feel so hard for me? And it's like, well, because it is really hard and no one's doing all of these things in one day. And if they are, good for them. That's a privilege. That's a real privilege. And not all of us have that privilege. So I also like, you know what I mean, Dana? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I was just going to say, I want to also circle this back to you wanted to do this episode was because your client was saying how one of the main places where they see this show up is in their relationship and disconnection between intention and task initiation with specifically food and then also exercise.
Yeah.
And so I'd love if you could talk about that and how that presents a little bit more. And then we're going to go into, okay, so how do we approach this in a different way without shame? And how can we start to break that habit loop, even if we are extremely burnt out and dysregulated?
Yeah, totally. Let's start with like a more basic approach to like what this loop can look like. So let's say all of a sudden you have this realization, like an awareness of like, oh my God, I didn't do something that I quote should, right? I forgot to eat lunch. I skipped lunch today. Totally lost track of time. I didn't text someone back. I skipped taking my medication. I haven't had any water all day. Like I've only been drinking caffeine.
I'm just getting this visual of like, boom, 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 like
Boom,
KO,
boom.
KO, KO, KO.
Totally.
I feel it. Each one of these, I'm like, I've done that before. Oh,
Oh,
God.
oof.
Except the missing lunch because I'm not that kind of ADHD.
Oh no, I've definitely like been like, oh shit, it's 2:30. I have to pick up the kids in 10 minutes. Did I eat? Like I'll eat something. Anyways, whatever it is. So, anyways, you have this realization and this awareness moment. We're like, oh crap, I fucked up. Or I didn't do something that's like on my wellness, like think something that I'm supposed to do. And then immediately afterwards, it's a self criticism. Instead of just noticing that it happened, our brain then piles on shame. Why can't I do basic things? Why are other people able to do this and other people don't have to try this hard? Like, why is it so easy for everyone else, but so difficult for me? I'm failing at taking care of myself. Why can't I do basic stuff? Why is it so hard for me? Why is it not hard for other people? And then like we pile on the shame. So naturally, our body then says, whoa, overload, shut down, avoid this, right? Because that's what shame does. It makes us feel absolute terrible about ourselves. So what's a self-preservation protective thing to do? Procrastinate. Decision fatigue, emotional dysregulation, a feeling of what's the point? Why should I do this? I'm going to shut down and avoid it. Why bother? I've already messed this up. Like I'm never going to remember to eat my lunch, or I keep skipping meals because I keep saying yes to other things that I shouldn't be. And like, why can't I prioritize myself? All this stuff, right? And then what happens is we have this epiphany. This is where diets are like fucking brilliant for anyone with ADHD or executive function. It's like their sweet sauce. It's like, oh, thank you. Because we had this temporary compensation, or as I would say, it's an overcorrection. It's like what we do is like in an attempt to try to fix it, we do it all at once. We're like, if only I had this new planner and I wrote down every single thing I was going to do at every single minute of every single day, and this is what I'm going to do. What if I created this new, unique, new morning routine where I'm getting up at 5 a.m., going for a run, doing this, doing that, I'm like freaking crushing it? What if I never miss a meal again because I meal prep every single thing that I'm going to eat this week? We come in with this overcorrection, this major compensating type of behavior where this is what I'm going to do now. This is the new thing. This is going to solve this problem. I'm never going to feel this shame ever again because I have a system now.
And then you get a massive rush of dopamine from
Oh my
that because
God.
you're like,
I'm
I have come up with the solution.
a
and I'm going to
brilliant
feel
master of life.
I'm going to feel so good when I do all of these things. And then you have the come down and you're like, oh, I'm the worst person ever. I'm never going to be able to do even a day of this because it was never realistic in the first place.
No, that's not sustainable. And then what happens? You miss one follow through. One day.
Like, I'm the worst.
One day.
Why did I even try?
One Sunday, you can't meal prep your entire meals for the rest of the week because God forbid you go and visit somebody or go out to lunch with your friends or whatever. And then all of a sudden, boom, here we go. The cycle begins again. And we're hit with like, oh crap, I didn't have time to meal prep. Now I'm a piece of crap who's never going to be able to eat lunch again. And all of these things start to pile on and we feel crappy about ourselves. Like, why can't I do this? Oh, let's talk about why we can't do it. This was not sustainable. This is Burnout Prime 101. And it's riddled with perfectionism. And we can't be perfect. We have to I actually had this conversation with a doctor this week. We're doing a workshop together on perimenopause in Philly. But one of the things that she says, we have to work within the realm of whelm. And I'm like, that is brilliant. Yes. Yes, we do, Dr. Mahal. You're absolutely right. But we don't, right? We come up with these grand ideas because it does feel so good to create a plan that feels so alluring and like, I'm going to solve the world's problems. And if I can stick to this, then I'm going to dominate every area of my life. And this is why we love diets. This is why we love it and we crush them. We freaking crush them for a solid month and then they just completely crash and burn because for 1 month, maybe we can cancel all of our plans and not do anything. We also create the parameters for it to be quote unquote successful because we plan for when we're going to do it, when we're not going to have anything going on. We do all the things. And then all of a sudden we think that it's the diet and this plan that was perfect and everything about it. It's like, no, I literally adjusted every single thing in my life, gave up everything that I enjoy, didn't go and do anything to make this work, and now we think that this system was perfect? No, it wasn't. It also wasn't sustainable because we don't live in like a petri dish where we're pretending to be able to do all these things at all the time. Like, there's just no way. So, this is the loop. Does anyone relate? Who doesn't? I mean,
Everyone
honestly,
relates.
raise your hand if you don't relate to this, right?
And please come on the podcast.
I would love to hear what you're doing with
what's
your
it like?
Like, what's that like?
Okay, we're going to take a quick pause here to talk about this week's sponsors because we got to pay the bills to keep this podcast running. So our sponsor this week is one of the #1 recommendations that I have been giving to clients, family, and friends for over the last 2 years. So let's talk about Hungry Root. You guys have heard me talk ad nauseum about how I have zero time to prep meals in the summer between coaching swim team, my full-time job in private practice, and of course the podcast and Patreon too. And truly, Hungry Root has been a lifesaver. And because as Christina and my swim kids know, I am not fun when I'm hangry. So whether you're in an extremely busy season, you have a lot of travel coming up over the summer, you have ADHD, or you're super burnt out and have zero mental space for coming up with new meal ideas for grocery shopping or for meal planning, Hungry Root could be a great resource for you. What I love most about it is the simplicity. Before your first order, you take a quick food preferences quiz, and we know us millennials love a quiz, and then Hungry Root will start recommending you different meals right from the jump. And in comparison to a lot of other meal kit and meal delivery services, Hungry Root is not prescribing or pushing any diets, which quite frankly is super refreshing. But if you do have celiac, any medical food restrictions, or any specific dietary needs, they'll make sure that you never get recommended or sent any food that you can't eat. So if you're looking for ways to make food more easily accessible, available, and make food prep a lot easier, Hungry Root has you covered with their simple but flavor-packed meal options that feel way easier than any other meal kit service I've ever tried. Some of my all-time favorite Hungry Root meals have been the tzatziki black bean burger bowl, the yuzu miso roasted salmon with asparagus over rice, lemon pepper chicken plus broccoli cheddar baked potato, and then the citrusy shrimp fried rice. So whether you have medical food restrictions, you're trying to save time, money, or eliminate food waste, Hungry Root has your covered. Huge thanks to Hungry Root for sponsoring today's episode, and make sure you check out the link in the show notes or use the code DANAM40 to receive 40% off your first box, plus get a free item in every single box for life. And now let's get back to the episode.
And so, what, I think also too from an ADHD perspective too. Well, actually, before we go on, Dana, do you have anything to add to the loop, like the cycle? Because we'll go into how it shows up with food and movement too. But
I mean, I was going to add that diets and the all or nothing mentality and ADHD go together like peanut butter and jelly. They're always together. And I want to always reiterate the reason why that is. So if you're someone who has been drawn to diets before, and this isn't just for ADHD either, it's when you have a diet or something that has a yes and no foods list, it's very black and white. Your decision fatigued brain loves that. It's like, oh my God, this is the golden ticket because you no longer have to make any decisions. They've already been made for you, which is also why stuff like, something like Hungry Root or Factor or any of these meal prepared meals things can work really well for people because the food is already there. The decision has already been made. You don't even have to think about what you're going to eat because all you have to do is open up the fridge and eat it or stick it in the microwave or the oven or whatever it is to do. And so one of the minimum 28 meals that you eat per week, if you eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, not including snacks, 28 decisions have been taken off of your plate for the week. Amazing. And so when you have that, you then also get capacity back to put into other things. So it makes a lot of sense that this could present in food, this can present in exercise, that can present in habits. This is why we love routines so much with ADHD, because not only is it soothing to the nervous system to know in a guaranteed way what is the next thing that's going to happen, but it also takes away so much of the not only decision fatigue from deciding what to eat, But then it also takes away the stress of like, well, I need to figure out something else to eat this week. Like my hyperfixation is over. What the heck else am I going to eat? Now I got to figure out which grocery store I'm going to. It takes like all of those steps out of the equation, or it automates them for you.
Yeah.
Which it's like having a virtual assistant for your food.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
But we all know it crashes and burns.
It
so don't
does.
do
It crashes and burns. I mean, but having tools available to help you with managing it and helping take away some of the decision fatigue is really helpful. So I think
And accessible in a non-diet way.
totally 100%. You don't have to like meal prep every single meal and put them all in these little containers and all the like, whoa,
don't.
that's so overwhelming. I also want to say too, so let's talk a little bit about how this might be piled on for someone with ADHD and how your mind's unique brain does things a little bit differently and how this can really feed into this shame cycle for people. So if you have executive dysfunction, right? And again, like if you're listening to this and you don't have ADHD or you don't think you do, you can still have like executive.
A diminished capacity.
Yeah, like to me, I look at this as like not executive dysfunction, but executive overload, right? Like it's overloaded with too many things. Like you cannot executive function to the capacity that we're expected to executive function, right? So when you have ADHD and you have executive dysfunction or executive overwhelm, your brain then struggles with task initiation, planning, prioritizing, and then following through. And it's not because you don't care or you aren't trying. It's just because how your brain is wired or because it just cannot do all of the things that it's expected to do. Things are going to fall. We cannot juggle all of these things in the air and not expect some things to fall. So that's one aspect of things that's happening. Another thing that I think is kind of unique too is the idea that people with ADHD have rejection sensitivity dysphoria as well, where many people with ADHD can feel this like really intense emotional response to perceived failure or disappointment, especially when it relates to yourself or letting other people down. How could this not feed that cycle, right? Like make it not make sense, right? If you have this like intense fear of letting yourself down, or you put such high expectations on yourself, right? And this is where like a dysregulated nervous system can play a big role, is that when you have chronic stress from unmet expectations, we're like operating with this like high perfectionism type of approach, both internal and external, that keeps you in a fight or flight or freeze state. You cannot function in that world. You cannot function with the degree that we're asked to function on a day-to-day basis with this happening, right? So it makes doing something even simple like brushing our teeth every day or taking a shower or making sure we're having breakfast harder to do. So that helps, like, to me, that's like almost like this internal framework that can happen for someone who has ADHD that's like layering into this. And then we take into the pressures of society. It makes sense that we're in this loop, right? So the loop, like to me, like it's more about, and a big piece about getting out of this loop is by bringing a lot of compassion. And so that's why we're explaining it and saying, here are all the factors that are going on. And if you're listening to this and thinking to yourself, one, I relate hardcore to this. And two, oh my God, what do I do now? Don't worry. Like there are things that we can do. Right? And unfortunately, a big piece of taking that is changing the expectations that we're holding ourselves to.
And I think having a healthy dose of self-love and tough love to yourself and being like, okay, all of these things that I would love to do in an ideal situation, is this realistic for me at any point in my life? And then also, is this realistic for me at this point of my life? Because those two answers can be very different.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I want to go back to Dana's question about exercise and like movement and what that looks like with ADHD and how this can fall into this. So let's go down a little journey. Imagine you want to start a workout routine because you know, like, oh, I feel better when I'm doing that. I feel better. I feel stronger. I have better endurance. It's better for my mental clarity. It's good for my mental health, blah, blah, blah. Like all of the things, right?
Yay. Love it.
Like I'm on board, right? I want to move my body, right? I sit at my desk all day. I want to do that. All right. So, but executive function can make it a little bit harder, right? It's like I have to pick what to do. Where am I going to work out? Remembering to do it. Am I going to get dressed? Do I leave the house to do it? Do I do it at home? Do I have the right equipment? Do I do all these things? What workout do I do? How do I know where to start? Blah, blah, blah. All these questions are coming up. And so you don't do it. You don't start, because then all of a sudden the shame creeps in and you think to yourself, I want to do this, and I should be able to do this, but why am I overwhelmed by the entire task of doing it? Right? And this is for the people who haven't started it. And there's a whole nother world of realm where you would fall into with, maybe you try, maybe you start. You're like, okay, I'm going to go for a walk every day around lunchtime. And I'm going to do this walk, and I'm going to do this mental health break, and I'm going to do like my little girly walk, whatever it is. That's what the girls are calling it. Right?
Mental health walk. Yeah.
Right?
Hot girl walk.
Hot girl walk.
That's what
right?
it is.
And so maybe you start, but then, one day you get asked by a friend to meet up for lunch one day, and it breaks the cycle. And then all of a sudden it's like, why can't I stick with anything? I should be able to do this. Why am I so lazy? Why won't I go to the gym even though I want to go to the gym? Why is it so hard for me to do this? Right? And so then that shame turns into that avoidance, right? Instead, your brain associates movement with failure and pressure, not joy, not relief, not the things you're getting from it, not the benefits, none of that. It's associating it now with, I'm a failure, so I'm going to avoid that. I can't fail at movement if I never go. I can't fail at this new routine if I don't ever go, right? So movement becomes this all or nothing. Either I am going to go every day and I'm going to do this thing. It only counts if I work out for 30 minutes. It only counts if I sweat. It only counts if I lose 30 pounds. It only counts if I do this, right? So you do this all or nothing. And if you can't do that, if that doesn't happen, then why bother? Right? It feeds this whole cycle. And so then you stop trusting yourself. You don't trust that you'll follow through with it. You overcorrect in these attempts to try to fix it. Like we talked about earlier with that time, like we overcorrect. We create this whole plan for like what it's going to look like. I'm going to start on Monday. I'm going to do this stuff, blah, blah, blah. Here's what we're going to do. And then it just completely feeds into this cycle, because then there's a lack of follow through, or there's a day when something happens, or God forbid you get the flu, and then you can't get back into the routine again because we went into it with this huge all or nothing thing. And so you add in the external messages that we're hearing. Well, you need to be disciplined. You need to get up earlier. No excuses. Just do it. You're going to feel better. You won't regret a workout. All the things that we're hearing, all that does is reinforce the idea that this is a personal flaw that you have that other people don't, not a mismatch between your brain and the system you're trying to follow. And it just feeds this cycle of us not feeling like we're doing enough.
Yeah. Also, all of those things that you were just saying reminds me of like a 2010 fitness inspiration Pinterest board. I was like, ooh, I've seen all those before.
Who hasn't? Right? It's so true. And so what do we do? Right? How do we break this cycle for ourselves? What do we do? I think one of the things that I was talking to my client about is we have to bring a lot of compassion, and we have to meet our capacity where we are, right? And we have to choose tiny act.
I think we need also a massive reframe, because when you were talking about the shame loop and all of the different, like, oh, I should do this and I should do this, and like all of the different guilt that comes in and the laundry list of things that we want to do in order to make us feel better. All of that sounds completely not only unrealistic, but exhausting. And I think it's helpful to go back to, what is the point of doing all of this anyway, right? What is your intention behind wanting to get in more movement? And you go back to the things that Christina said a couple of minutes ago, right? Like, I have more mental clarity. I have more energy. I feel more regulated. I can get this excess energy out of my body. It's good for cardiovascular health. All of these things. None of the things that you just described meet those intentions. And so when we're thinking about what is a tool that is going to work for me, I want you to go back to, what is my intention, or what am I trying to get out of this task, or this health promoting behavior, or this whatever it is? Because if your intention with exercise is you want some mental clarity, it doesn't have to be a freaking 60-minute HIIT workout that you have to do every single day. It can be a 10-minute walk in the park And it does not have to be every day.
Mm.
It does not have to be every day. One thing that I always try to reiterate on this podcast and everywhere, but especially with ADHD, is it's what you do most of the time that matters. And hey, most of the time is 51%. Okay. If you're 49% no and 51% yes, or whatever it is, and even if, let's say you're going from not moving at all and then you only move once this week, that is 100% more than you've been doing for the past couple of weeks. So
100%.
even if your goal was, I want to do this 3 times this week, and you only do it once, you still did it more than the week before.
Yeah.
So try to use that as some positive momentum.
Yes.
And then even if you don't do it the following week, you've still done it 100% more than you did 3 weeks ago. So I think you need to give yourself some compassion, and also thinking about your capacity currently, which, to be honest, for everybody is like a lot lower right now than most of the time, given the state of the world and personally for all of us. And everybody's burnt out. And that's why we've been doing episodes like this, is with these health promoting behaviors or whatever it is, go back to, what do I need from this? What would benefit my body? What would actually help me feel better? And what is the bare minimum that I could do to get there? Like Christina was saying, these tiny little changes, because sometimes that is enough to give your brain a little bit of that dopamine to be like, oh my God, maybe I can do this. Maybe I could do this for 5 minutes. Maybe I could do this for 1 minute, whatever it is. Because, and we've talked about this before. I have been much more of like an exerciser than Christina for our whole lives, right? In terms of just like personality. But I have had many different iterations in not only my relationship with exercise, but the way that my exercise looks over the years. And you just have to get rid of this doesn't count. Your body does not count. Your body is not keeping a tally of how many minutes you are on the bike or going for a walk. Your body is like, I'm going to tell you when I hit this threshold of this was good enough, and you don't need to go farther than that. So I think we all need a massive reality check of compassion to be like, this is all, we are putting so many expectations unrealistically, and also these like all or nothing plans, which again, we completely understand why the brain is drawn to those things, but also they're not actually making your life any easier. They may reduce the decision fatigue in the immediate short term, but in the action plan, it's making your life a lot more exhausting and a lot more complicated. So my one piece of advice would be, go to the intention of what are you actually trying to get out of this thing, whatever it is, fill in the blank. And then when you are constructing a plan, make sure it's in alignment with that intention in a realistic way that is actually something that you could implement on a sustainable basis.
Yeah. I think one of the things too that sometimes people struggle with, and it makes sense, it's, well, if I don't find time or schedule something, or if I don't have some structure, then it will never happen. Yes, you're absolutely right. Sometimes we do actually have to create structure. Structure is not the problem here. The problem here is the perfectionism and the ride or die with the structure only. They're like, if I don't do it, then it doesn't count. And so one of the things that I have been working on for myself, and also one of the things that I was talking to my client about, is celebrating maintenance. Celebrate the maintenance of this. Not so much that I did it every day or that it counts or anything like that. I want you to celebrate the fact that I did this imperfectly and that I've maintained it. I'm celebrating the maintenance of this. I'm actually doing more, like Dana was saying, is doing 100% more than you did the week before because you went one more time. Like, that's 100% more. And celebrating the maintenance of this. Like, okay, I'm actually doing that. One of the things too that I think comes up a lot, especially for
you have to eat your broccoli before you have dessert.
I don't wanna.
Now you hate broccoli.
Yeah, like now we hate broccoli. It's like, no, I don't want to. Like, and there's like this huge, like, I'm not going to do what you tell me to do. Motivation comes from the idea of being connected to it and having it be novelty and have it be like maybe urgency. Sometimes we're like, I can see if I can pack it in real quick before I go pick up my kids from school. Like they love that, the urgency of it, and that's fine too. But also I think that's one thing to remember as well, is nothing exciting came from I should do this. That's not particularly motivating. That's kind of like rooted in shaming because it has the word should in it. So instead, we have to find the motivation by what makes us feel connected to it. And that's really coming up with the why. Why am I doing this? Why am I excited about this? Why do I want to do this? Why? Like all of these things, like how does this make me feel? How do I want to enjoy this? And then work on microscopic steps, something tiny, something really tiny to help you to be excited about it and to make it more fun.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I think we can leave it there.
I think that's good.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let us know what questions or comments you have on this. I'm sure this is extremely relatable. Honestly, sometimes when we do these episodes, I'm like, is this a therapy session for both of us?
Sometimes.
I'm sure it can feel that way for you guys.
No, but sometimes I do. Like I sometimes my clients will talk to me about this stuff. I'm like, girl,
Relate hard.
I feel you. Insert this thing here.
Yeah. Yeah. So let us know if you want more of a deep dive on like a specific example with something like this.
Or how to
let
work
us
through
know.
it, or be kind of fun to do a case study. That'd be kind of cool. If someone wants to come on
Yeah.
and do it with us and we can talk about like their unique situations going on and then we can walk them through, like kind of coach them, that'd be really fun to do. I'd be into doing that.
Yeah. Let us know.
Okay.
Okay, so like we mentioned in the last episode, this is our final episode of season 8. We hope you all have really enjoyed this season. If you want continued support, if you have questions, or if you want to keep going with these episodes every other week until the new season hits in September, feel free to join us on Patreon, which is patreon.com/Millennial Body Image Project. You can also find us on Instagram, you can find us on TikTok, and you can also email us at millennialbodyimageproject@gmail.com if you have any questions. And we hope you guys have a great summer, and if you're not on Patreon, we'll see you in a couple months. All right, see you all soon.